It's the end of day 8 of Sarah Hartsfield's murder trial, ending in a conviction for the retired military combat veteran, mother of 4, married 5 times, convicted of killing her 5th husband, Joseph Hartsfield. He died due to an insulin overdose. The jury just spent an hour deliberating before returning with that guilty verdict, and now we are waiting to find out how much time Sarah Hartsfield will spend in prison. She's facing up to life. The minimum punishment would be just 5 years, but again, facing up to life in prison tonight. We should find out tomorrow morning when the jury returns to make that decision. Throughout this trial, we have not been able to speak very closely with any of the witnesses who have been involved. That includes the mother of Joseph Hartsfield, but during the beginning part of the punishment phase this afternoon, his mother took the stand. Listen to what she had to say.
Life will never be the same. Our holidays are different. Family get-togethers aren't the same anymore. Joe was just so full of life.
That is Helen Hartsfield there on the stand, Joseph Hartsfield's mother. She testified during this trial saying that her son, Joseph, worried that Sarah would kill him, possibly in his sleep. Helen Hartsfield has a birthday coming up and had told me before this trial, before we got here, that she was just hoping for a conviction. That was what she wanted for her birthday this year. So some relief from those who knew Sarah tonight. People from her past, a lot of relief that I've heard from some of these people who are also glad that she has been convicted, because for years they say she's got away with things that she shouldn't have or that should have been investigated further. That is a lot of the messages that I've received throughout the afternoon and now into the evening since that verdict was reached. I do want to bring in our legal expert, Rick DeToto. He got to come down to the courthouse today and hear some of the closing.
Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts just initially after seeing this all happen?
Wow, it was a surprisingly quick verdict. I think the jury sent a message to the defendant and the prosecution that they clearly proved their case. Initially, I thought this would be a tough case to prove, but looks like I was incorrect in that assumption. And it was a tough day for the defense. And they've sent a message to this defendant and again to the prosecution that they proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. So, very dramatic day.
Yeah, I mean, an hour. It's like we came out to have lunch, and then next thing you know, it was like we heard the bell. And at first we thought that the bell might have meant that the jury had a question in there, because that could happen sometimes. And that wasn't the case. Next thing we knew, they were ready to come back in with the verdict. So very quick that all of that happened. I do want to play the moment that the verdict was read in court, and then you can see how Sarah reacted to that.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Sarah Hartsfield, guilty of the offense of murder as alleged in the indictment.
And you see there, just before she sits down, it appears that she kind of shook her head a little bit. I mean, what kind of conversations do you think that her attorneys were having with her going into today? And do you think that she knew, based on how fast that verdict happened, that this is where it was going?
Yeah, this is the stuff they don't teach you in law school. It's extremely difficult, especially in high-profile cases with everyone watching. When you're about to go into closing argument and you know that there's going to be a verdict at some point, you have to sit down with your client and say, look, this could be a really good day, this could be a really bad day, but whatever happens, you can't react. They don't teach you how to go through the emotions. Sometimes the defendants cry, they don't know how to deal with it. So it's really difficult as a defense lawyer in this situation to try to get that across to your client. And then as soon as they came back, within an hour, I was almost positive it was a guilty verdict based on a case of this profile and how long it took to try the case. So it was pretty surprising to me.
I mean, yeah, like you said, it was an hour and there were still so many questions. We talked about some mistakes that had been made during the law enforcement investigation, and there was no video, no hard evidence that said, you know, she injected him or that maybe she used his hand to inject himself. I mean, what do you think they were thinking back there? So
it's a circumstantial case, and two things happened. Number one, I think the extraneous offenses that were admitted into the trial infected the trial. Infected the trial.
And the extraneous offenses, I mean, we're talking about the murder for hire plot involving one of the ex-husband's new wives. We're talking about the shooting of an ex-fiance. So what do you mean when you say infected it?
Well, they heard evidence of prior wrongs and acts and crimes that probably made them hate her, even before they made a decision as to whether or not she was guilty in this case. In my opinion, they shouldn't come in, but that's an argument for a different day. Number two, yesterday when we find out that over the time period that he was sick, 20 hours, she was walking all over, she was ordering groceries, she was on her apps. So I think that also hit the jury hard, and that was, for me, kind of what turned me to the other side, that, you know, she was sitting there during that time period doing nothing while he was struggling. So I think, number one, the extraneous turned the jury against her, and number two, the evidence from yesterday regarding the posts on the computer were the problem for her.
I think early in this trial we talked about this and kind of the order about calling witnesses and who you call and when you call them, and they obviously saved the lead detective to be the very last person that the state called, and that's when that evidence came out, the phone records specifically, that kind of surprised a lot of people. I mean, the Apple legacy contact, setting herself up to get all of his phone data when someone dies. Was that strategic? It wasn't emotional testimony from the detective. It was just kind of the cold, hard facts that she found.
Well, it had to be, and I think that they did a good job of making that person last on the witness list to get across what we just talked about that came out yesterday regarding the legacy and the surfing on the phone. It stuck with me regarding the legacy because we had a conversation yesterday, and I didn't know anything about that. I'm like, wow, you know, this person is sick. It's her husband going through a rough time, and she's worried about, you know, getting on his passcodes and getting access to his bank accounts and stuff like that. So I always say that you put your most effective witness last, because that's the last thing the jury is going to hear and the last thing they're going to remember before they go back and deliberate.
Yeah. The jury, as we've noted throughout this, it was 8 men and 4 women. You got to see them in there today. And again, we're talking about how fast they reached this verdict. Just any thoughts from what you could see and maybe the faces that they had when they came in with the verdict?
Yeah, my initial impressions of seeing the jury for the first time today was that they were very intense. Some of them were leaning forward on the seats. They were watching the witnesses. They all seemed to be engaged in the trial, specifically when the prosecutor was talking. So that tells us that they're listening to the prosecutor, that they're accepting the information they're getting, and they're very concerned about what's going on in the courtroom. There were a couple of young jurors on there. I thought that may be a positive thing for the defense, but it turned out, you know, it wasn't, and they found her guilty.
When we're talking about these younger jurors, because I think, you know, a lot of younger people might be seeing like the true crime feeds and things on their social media or things, or I don't know. Do you think that maybe played a role in their thinking on this? So
first of all, jury speculation is an impossible art, but generally in cases, younger people are more liberal, they're more suspect to law enforcement, they're more critical on law enforcement making mistakes, and they do rely on, in some cases, the true crime stories and the fiction crime stories to show a perfect little bow and wrap everything up, and when the state doesn't do that, sometimes they're on our side as defense lawyers.
Well, I want to play some of the closing arguments that we heard from the state and, of course, from Sarah Hartsfield's defense attorney. We have some of that, and then we can talk more about that. Take a listen.
This is a lying and murderous wife who drugged her husband, overdosed him on insulin, and then just sat there and ordered groceries and complained about him while he was laying there dying in the way that he was most terrified of. And my job requires me to walk among monsters, and my faith calls me to fear no evil. But as a resident of this community, the idea that she can get up and walk out of here with the rest of us terrifies me, and I hope it terrifies you. Because there is no question if she will hurt another person.
They have no evidence that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. We spent half of these days on extraneous offenses, calling Sarah a bad person, but they still can't prove that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. How many people testified to extraneous offenses? What, like 20? How many people testified that Sarah administered insulin to Joe? 0.
So you could hear from those closing arguments from both attorneys. I mean, the prosecutor, she said that basically it terrifies her because she said there was no question that Sarah would hurt someone else. And then the defense attorney, he's talking about, well, we didn't hear any testimony about her injecting this insulin. All we heard about was all these extraneous offenses and people that she has allegedly hurt in the past. How do you think that those two things kind of connected or disconnected when the jury's hearing that?
Well, as a defense attorney, that's what he had to argue. He had to say, look, there's no direct proof that she administered the insulin to him, and that was true in this case. However, the prosecution did a good job of showing that there was only 2 people there that could have done it, even though the police officers admitted that they didn't test the insulin containers and didn't check for fingerprints or contact DNA. So it was a circumstantial evidence, but there was two people in the room, and one of them's dead and one of them's not. He had a high insulin level, so I thought they did a good job in closing and pointing it out to the jury.
Yeah, it was interesting. Both of our closing arguments, I think it went about 2 hours or so. 40 minutes, I think the defense had, and the rest was taken up by the prosecution. I mean, what do you make of that timeline?
It's pretty typical in a case like this. Some judges are more lenient on time, some are more strict to keep you at a tighter guideline. It just depends on the judge, but very typical closing arguments. The length was, typical in a case like this, so nothing extraordinary there.
What do you think when you get to the closing argument like that? Has the jury pretty much made up their mind, especially in this case when they were only back there for an hour?
Yeah, I mean, generally they probably have. As lawyers, we don't like to think that because of our egos and what we're trying to do, but generally I think they've made up their mind. Hopefully there's something that you can do to sway one or two people if you're losing, to get them to hold out and find not guilty. That's kind of what we're doing in some cases, as we recognize when we go in it's a very difficult case. But I would say in this case they had their mind made up, and I don't think at that point there was anything the defense could have done to change their mind based on their 70-minute verdict.
Yeah, it was very quick. We keep saying that. I think that was the theme. It was a little unexpected, honestly. I mean, you would come down, you got here around noon, and I think by 2:40 or so is when we knew that there was a verdict. One of the things that came up was the prosecutor in her closing argument talked with the jury really about the voluminous amount of evidence in this case. I mean, we saw stacks and stacks of binders. Really, I didn't know binders. They made binders as big as some of the ones that she had in there. And the prosecutor said, a lot of this is because Sarah has said things. She has sent things. She has written things. All of this is evidence that we have because of what she said. Do you see that very often?
Yeah, all the time. In many ways, sometimes our clients are our own worst enemies, whether it's texts, emails, phone calls, calling from the jail calls, documents. Sometimes people get confident in what they're doing, and they've been getting away with it for such a long period of time that they don't think they're going to get in trouble, and they never really have, and it catches up to them. So it's common. It doesn't happen all the time, but we see it a lot in the court system.
I think what the prosecutor said is that she thought maybe she was the smartest person in the room, and that she didn't think that she was going to get caught this time. That was another part of the closing argument. Yeah,
it's a good argument. It could be true.
One of the messages actually that she sent to us from jail was one of the things that the prosecutor mentioned when she was talking about, all of the evidence that Sarah Hartsfield has created in this case. She mentioned, the message that she has sent to reporters during this. We have that message, and we've used this several times throughout this case. She said in that message that she sent us that if she's guilty of anything, it's picking horrible husbands. Now, the prosecutor said that again in the closing argument. The jury had not actually seen it before that, but I mean, when you see a message like that, what do you think? As
a defense lawyer, I shake my head, and if I'm a prosecutor, I'm going to blow that up as big as I can, and it's going to be part of my closing argument, because that is the quote of the trial. It reflects on her badly. It's kind of ironic, and I would have done everything I could theatrically in closing arguments as a prosecutor to make sure they saw that consistently and throughout my closing. It's just a really bad statement by her.
Yeah, that was one that we got back in 2023, one of many. I think the stack that I have is maybe like 80 pages of things that she has said. I don't even know, and that was just to me. There were 4 other media outlets that got messages from her as well, and in fact, the first defense attorney that she had on this case, she had 3 different ones throughout the duration of this. The first one, they didn't get along, and she wrote a letter firing him, and part of his advice to her was that she stop talking to the media, and I guess maybe it stuck when she got the 3rd one, and maybe he had the same advice. What do you tell your clients about that?
Well, I mean, when it comes to media, you don't talk to them. You don't talk to anyone about your case outside of your lawyers. You don't talk to family, friends, neighbors. You don't put it on social media. You don't put it in an email or text, because anything you say outside of the attorney-client relationship can be used against you. And prosecutors nowadays are getting much better at searching the internet, Facebook, all the social media apps to find out if you've said anything, if you're posting videos. So you just keep your mouth shut up.
Yeah, I mean, and the reality too is even if you go and delete these things from your Facebook messages on your phone, it seems like with the search warrants that they send to actually Meta or whatever the social media platform is, they can get all of that, right?
You have to assume everything you put on text or email, anything electronic can be recovered. We deleted it 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They can get it nowadays, and it can come back to haunt you.
Yeah. In this case, maybe it did. I mean, they had all of those Facebook messages and a lot of posts that she made, during the time that he was hospitalized, and even including what she put on Facebook about his obituary, where she included the type of stroke that he had. And the prosecutor said, how often when someone dies do you wonder how they died, but you don't know because it's not in the obituary? Well, in this case, it was. Trying to say that it was the stroke. We talked a lot during all of this leading up to today about the possibility of Sarah testifying in this trial. And we saw all the notes that she had been taking. Today when she walked into court, I saw she had what appeared to be the notes in her hand. She didn't testify. What do you think?
I have no doubt that all of her lawyers have been pleading with her throughout this trial not to testify. Even before the trial started, but as the trial went along and the evidence came out, it got worse in terms of cross-examination of her. So I think that she did the right decision. I think her lawyers were right in not having her testify. The cross-examination would have been brutal, going over all those texts and all the things she said and moving around the house and ordering groceries, and we talked about bringing a bag of groceries and putting it on the table. It just would have been a brutal cross-examination. So I think she did make the right decision in that point. She probably second guesses it right now, but I don't think she could have helped herself in any way, in my opinion.
So you think she's maybe back in the jail across the street here thinking, what if I would have testified?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say. I've never been a defendant in a case, but obviously she's going to second guess her decisions, and someone who's strong-willed and likes to talk is probably going to say, I probably shouldn't have let my lawyers talk me out of this. Maybe I could have said something that would have changed her mind, but in my 30 years experience, that cross-examination would have been really, really bad, and the verdict may have came back in 10 or 15 minutes after that.
Could have been faster than it was
Yes,
even today. We do have some video, obviously, to show you from her time in court, so we can play that for you. We've seen, a lot of the faces that she's made. She has seemed to react during this to different things that she's heard. You can see she's leaning over to her defense attorney there. I think, throughout this trial, she has been very adamant about making sure they know her side of everything. Are clients normally talking to you like that in your ear and keeping you? What are they saying to you in those moments? So
it happens, but it can upset the jury. So if a witness is testifying and the defendant is making a face like, she doesn't believe it or shaking her head, and the jury believes it, that's going to upset them because it's inconsistent with what they think the evidence is. I tell my clients to show little emotion, be respectful, stand up, yes ma'am, no ma'am, take notes on a piece of paper, but don't scribble furiously, take notes. When I have a break, hand them over to me and we'll talk about it. You want to be like, kind of like a job interview. You want them to get to know you and see how you react, see that you're respectful, see that you look scared, not up there making faces or shaking your head. So she kind of got away with some stuff in front of the jury, and they probably didn't like it.
I wonder, because it's a very small courtroom. You were in there. It was close quarters.
Yeah.
They share a table. That's not what you see in a lot of courtrooms these days, is it?
No. Actually, when I walked in today, I haven't been to Anahuac in a while, but I saw that the prosecutor and defense lawyer were literally right next to each other. They probably overlap papers. And you're right, the jury can see every reaction she's doing, every shake of the head. And it just doesn't work out well for defendants usually in those situations.
The defense didn't put on any witnesses. Again, we said earlier the state had over 30. It was 34 people that they called, and the defense called 0. Initially, we saw that the defense attorney had sent out some subpoenas to some additional doctors, Joseph Hartsfield's ex-wife, and some of the toxicologists from the medical examiner's office, but he didn't end up calling those people. What do you make of that by the time we got to today?
So it's hard for me to tell unless I'm part of the defense team, but I would speculate that in terms of civilian witnesses, maybe there was no one out there that could help her. Maybe there was no one out there the defense felt would come to court and help her in terms of her credibility or what happened. The other thing I was concerned about was I thought maybe the defense should have put on their own expert to combat what was said and to get across the part of, they didn't know the cause of death and exactly who did it. I would have at least put on something in terms of an expert, but that's just my opinion. It's not my case. I have all respect for the defense lawyers in this case. But I just thought maybe there's some other evidence they could have get to the jury about the medical issues in the case. Yeah,
because diabetes is complicated, and the prosecutor mentioned it's like we maybe should have earned college credit for sitting through some of the medical testimony about all of the things and how the insulin works in the body and how diabetes, if it's mismanaged, works. So it was a lot, and like you said, the jury did seem really intent, and they were making sure they got notes and knew what was going on throughout everything. We're now at the punishment phase for all of this, and for people who don't understand what that means, and we should clarify, this is first-degree murder. It's not a capital murder case, so it's not like a death penalty eligible case. There's no death penalty on the table. But what is the punishment phase? What does that mean?
So in Texas, there's two parts to a trial. The first part is whether you're guilty or innocent. You get to decide if a judge or a jury decides that. The second phase, if you're found guilty, is punishment, and you get to decide if the jury decides your punishment. The punishment ranges from 5 to 99 or life, and the defense lawyers have the opportunity to put on any evidence about her, any character evidence, any good things about her, any medical evidence, and also she does have another opportunity to testify to this jury. In my opinion, at this point, there's really nothing to lose. And they might want to consider putting her on to talk about the abuse that she had when she was a child, to get into that in more detail and try to get a little bit of sympathy from some of those jurors, to help her in the punishment phase.
Yeah, we did start to hear some of that testimony today. We heard from one of her foster mothers, actually, who said that Sarah came into her family after, I think, being with a different foster family before that, but she was in the foster care system because of allegations that her biological father had molested her as a young child. So we did start to hear some of these things from the past. We also heard from her children. So the children testified in the trial on Monday what they knew about some of those past alleged crimes that Sarah Hartsfield possibly committed but hasn't been charged for. But today they got up and they talked about some different stuff. You heard some of that testimony, and I think I turned around and looked at you after her oldest daughter, Ashley, got off the stand. And what did you say?
I said she did well. She's a really good witness. As a parent, that was devastating to me. It broke my heart. It broke my heart to see those kids up there and have to testify against their mom to some pretty rough stuff that happened in the childhood. The first witness was direct, to the point. She got her story out, and I could feel her emotions in the courtroom. I could feel that she's been wanting to get that out for many, many years. It was just, I was drawn into her as a witness. I thought she was very effective, and I thought they got the point across to the jury, and I think it's going to be extremely damaging to the defendant in this case.
It was emotional. I mean, it was hard not to tear up hearing some of those things. And looking around the courtroom, I think there were some others that were doing the same. Yeah. Just hearing from the three daughters of Sarah Hartsfield who say that they suffered years of physical and mental abuse at the hands of their mother. They said some days with her were great, and they said other days were terrible. I think we have some of the sound actually from Ashley when she talked about her mother, if we can play that now as well.
There was never such thing as just a spanking with her. It was always a beating. There were times where I told her to her face, I'm going to call CPS and make sure you lose all of your kids. And she said, good, I'm going to give you a reason to do it. And the beatings would last for hours.
So she said there was nothing, it was never just a spanking with her, it was a beating, and that was similar to what we heard, from the other daughters. So now, as the jury is starting to think about the punishment phase, and they hear that, again, after coming back with the conviction so quickly, they're hearing what she's allegedly done to her kids all these years. What does that do?
It's devastating. They've heard evidence of the extraneous offenses throughout this trial regarding her previous husbands. Now they've heard, after finding her guilty and convicting her of murder, that she was extremely abusive to her children, and they suffered during that time frame, and they had to come to court in front of the public, in front of the cameras, in front of all these people in national media and testify about what their mom did to them. Devastating evidence, and I think it can do nothing but hurt her in terms of what the range of punishment is going to be.
What does it say to you? I mean, they don't live in town. They have school, they have jobs, they didn't have to be here technically, but the fact that they were here, and it's been a week and a half now, what does that say to you?
To me, the thing that pops in my head is courage. Yeah. They could have said, look, this is my mom and this is too emotional and I've been too much in my life and I'm trying to move past it and I don't want to do this. But they felt, it appears that they felt that they needed to come down here and get this out and let the jury know in terms of what happened. But I also felt, this again, it's just my opinion, but they needed to get it out. They needed to get their story out. They needed everyone to hear what happened to them. And I think it helped them in their healing process as they go through this.
Yeah. It appears that the testimony that we are going to hear from them might be over now, and tomorrow morning the attorneys will have some additional arguments, and then the jury will have to, I guess, go back into their room and deliberate about the punishment. During the jury selection process, the prosecutor and the defense, asked everyone, are you comfortable with giving the maximum possible for this crime, which is life?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And the defense asked, of course, are you comfortable giving the minimum possible for this crime, which is 5 years, right?
Yes, sir.
So it's quite a range, 5 years up to life that she's facing. And so then tomorrow, what can we expect to see kind of with the process, do you think?
So it's going to be closing arguments, just like in guilt innocence. I suspect the prosecutors will want the defense to go first. They're going to get in front of the jury and argue why that she should be on the lower end of the punishment range. I suspect it's going to be related to her abuse as a child and never getting treated and that kind of stuff. And then
and also maybe the fact she has no convictions.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Would that be
yeah, absolutely.
relevant?
That's something that's relevant. And then the prosecution's going to come out guns blaring. They're going to bring up all the extraneous offenses. They're going to argue how she's gotten away with this for so many years, the abuse of her children. I suspect they're going to ask for something, really high in the top end of the punishment range. And based on the jury's verdict, it's just a prediction, but I don't think the jury's going to be out very long on this one either.
Why is that?
Well, it's a quick verdict. I mean, a really quick verdict in a case like this. I can't remember a high-profile murder case like this where there's been such a quick verdict. We joke as lawyers, when a jury goes back to deliberate, it takes at least them an hour to get settled in, to pick a foreman, to read the jury questionnaire and kind of get started. So based on what I saw today, it's just, again, my opinion. I think it's going to be a quick verdict.
Well, we will see. That's something that we'll find out tomorrow. Before we wrap up, is there any final thoughts that you have? You've been so helpful in explaining everything, and I know people who have been watching, I've got messages, people have enjoyed hearing from you throughout this. Just your final thoughts. I mean, this is Chambers County. This is a case that this county really hasn't seen before.
Yeah, I'm just glad I'm not the defense lawyers in this case. It's good to be on this side of it because the stress and the anxiety and the preparation and the late hours you have to put in to defend someone, as well as the prosecutors. It's just a real stressful situation. There's no winners, there's no losers. Someone died, someone's going away to prison, the family's been devastated. So it's just a tragedy. And it's difficult to watch, but that's how the courts work.
Yeah. And a lot of times you see where there may be a plea deal ahead of time so that there isn't this whole long, drawn-out emotional process of a trial, but obviously that didn't happen in this case, and it ended up going to a trial. I want to just check, I'm sorry, I know you give me a hard time about the one more question thing, but I do want to see if there's any other questions here on YouTube. There's still a couple. Ninfa's pointing at me to look. So thank you for telling me, because I don't want to end this before we look at these. What, if any, military benefits will she get or forfeit as a convicted murderer? Do you know the answer on that one?
I don't know, but I would suspect, and again, I don't know for sure, that if she's convicted of felony at this point, that they may cut those off, but I don't have a complete answer to that.
I think one of our colleagues back at the station did look it up because there's something that was on the Department of Veterans Affairs website. Veterans who receive a VA pension will have payments terminated effective the 61st day after imprisonment in a federal, state, or local penal institution for conviction of a felony or a misdemeanor. So if that's from the VA,
yeah, it sounds reasonable.
So basically 61 days after a conviction, then maybe that because she was medically retired from the U.S. Army. She spent about 20 years in the Army, according to the Army, and was deployed to Iraq at one point for less than a year. I'm looking here. One other question that we got in Texas: the jury decides. Can the judge change, subtract, or add time to whatever the jury decides?
No, whatever the jury decides, the judge is going to honor and follow, and that's the verdict in this case.
Okay.
Now, there's one thing you do need to understand is that if the jury can't reach a decision on punishment, it's called a hung jury, and they can hang on punishment. So what would happen in that situation is they only retry punishment, but effectively they have to try the case again because the new jury doesn't know about the facts of the case, so they put all the evidence in again.
If they're a hung jury on punishment?
On punishment, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Because you have a new jury, and they don't know the facts of the case. So you have to effectively retry the case in front of the new jury for punishment purposes. It goes a little bit quicker, but it's tedious.
Wow. Well, that wouldn't be right away, right?
No. I suspect, well, it depends on the court,
Okay.
It depends on the court, but I suspect the judge would give everyone time to get regroup and get back together. But yeah, that's a possibility in any case.
Okay, and one other thing, because I didn't ask you this, but I think it is a question that everyone has. What about the possibility of an appeal? And what kind of goes into making that decision? Does it happen every time?
In this case, no question in my mind that there's going to be an appeal. I don't know if the defense lawyers that try the case are going to appeal it. If she can't afford a lawyer, the court will appoint an appellate lawyer. And all the stuff that I talked about, just one part of it with the extraneous offenses, they will object to the Court of Appeals and make their legal arguments and whatever else happened in the trial to make a determination if the Court of Appeals feels that she got a fair trial. That usually takes 2 to 3 years, so it'll be some time before that's figured out, but someone will appeal this case.
Okay, and so how soon will we find out about that actually being filed? How soon does that usually happen? So
from the date judgment is entered, you have 30 days. Okay. So typically, when I'm in court, I will withdraw from the case, but I will fill out the appellate form for the defendant and have them sign it pro se, meaning the representative themselves at that time, just to get it on the record and filed so we're within that 30-day time period.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will obviously have to wait and see. Not everything is done here yet because we're still waiting to find out how long she'll be sent to prison. Rick, thank you so much for everything, and of course, I'll check in with you again tomorrow when
yes,
when we're trying to find out what the sentence will look like. But again, just to recap here, the end of day 8, Sarah Hartsfield convicted of murder. She is now a convicted killer behind bars across the street here in the Chambers County Jail tonight, waiting to find out what type of sentence that she'll serve, anywhere from 5 years up to life in prison. The jury will make that decision tomorrow morning. And from what I've heard from, again, a lot of the people from the past, the exes, the family members, they are expressing a lot of relief that the jury reached this decision today. So thanks so much for joining us on YouTube Live. You can watch all of our coverage of the case so far on the YouTube channel, but tonight we do want to leave you with the Two Sides of Sarah investigative documentary that we did back in 2023. This was right after Sarah's indictment, and we started learning more about this case. I mean, it's been kind of surreal. I just want to say this for a minute, because it's not often that we get to cover a case from the arrest until a day like this, where there's a conviction.
Yeah, and let me just say, for you, I've never had as detailed notes from a reporter regarding this case. I mean, not thousands, but hundreds of pages of notes regarding what happened in the courtroom. It was impressive, and I know you poured your heart on this case, and as a lawyer, I appreciate that and the preparedness and going through this that we've had to deal with.
Oh, thank you. You've made it easy, because I just throw questions at you whenever they pop into my head. But thank you. No, I mean, there's been a lot to keep notes on because it has moved so quickly. But this documentary that we did back in 2023, it was, again, right after Sarah's arrest, and we found out about the arrest, I believe, over a weekend, that Monday, right after we started covering the story and started learning more. And really the way we found out was from this Facebook post, which is how a lot of people from Sarah Hartsfield's past found out that she had been arrested. And that's when the sheriff's office started getting calls from all over the country about things that they thought needed to be investigated, or at least needed to be part of what the investigator knew. So the Two Sides of Sarah, we'll leave you with that, and we'll see you again here at the Chambers County Courthouse tomorrow morning. Have a good night.
She has a very mean, evil streak in her.
You don't expect somebody you know to kill somebody.
It takes a special kind of diabolical thinking to do that to other people.
Things just weren't adding up. Deputies arrested 48-year-old Sarah Jean Hartsfield on Friday.
Well, new at 5 o'clock, a Chambers County woman accused of killing her husband.
Sarah Jean Hartsfield left a wake of exes behind her, 2 of them now dead.
When she's done with somebody, she discards them, and you can't, they're people.
Anytime anybody shows her that she's not in control, that she lashes out.
Rare is it when a military intelligence person goes off the rails. But when they do, it's a train wreck. It's ugly.
She's hurt so many people, and it needs to stop.
She's conniving.
Black Widow. She needs people to feed her ego. She just preys on others.
No, that's not the Sarah I know.
There's probably her inner self that she fights with and the outer self that she wants to portray.
There were 2 sides, you would think she was happy and everything was good, and then no, not so much.
He learned the other wrath side of Sarah.
The Facebook post said, $5 million bond on murder suspect. We found out just like a lot of people who knew Sarah. While covering the story the next day, the county sheriff told me all of her living exes were scared for their lives. Several exes? More than one dead? The comments on that post started stacking up quickly. People from all over the place seemed to have a story about Sarah. That's when the calls started and didn't stop for months. Stories that almost sounded unreal with each day. The stories came from across the country, but this twisted web didn't start to unravel until husband number 5.
I worried all the time and prayed about it, that God would protect him.
How did you find out about the day he went to the hospital?
She had called my daughter and told her that Joe had been taken to the hospital. He had been taken to the emergency room and he was unresponsive.
Were you surprised?
I won't say I was surprised at all. I expected something was going to happen.
Joseph Hartsfield was 46, a father of 2, a diabetic whose sugar usually ran high, but his glucose level had dropped dangerously low. Sarah said she left a glass of juice for him on the counter to help bring it up, even got some jam to put in his mouth. But once he was at the hospital in Baytown, doctors did everything they could to raise it, but nothing seemed to work. Sarah's family and Joe's family spent the next 8 days just hoping he'd pull through.
It was very nerve-wracking, very, it'd be just like anybody else. I mean, it was hard. Mm-hmm. We were all trying to figure out, what was going on.
What were the doctors saying?
Well, I saw 2 doctors while we were there. I don't think that I can go into what was said.
I know more about while he was in a coma, because my mom was like texting me updates and stuff. I think she was like insinuating that, he might have taken too much insulin. I just had a weird feeling. Like, I was like, this is weird. I'm just gonna wait and see how this plays out.
Sarah's son Ryan wasn't the only one who suspected something. Doctors did too, maybe foul play, so they called the Chambers County Sheriff's Office, and that's when the investigation started. It didn't make sense how Joe's sugar got so low because he wore a glucose monitor. So basically, anytime it got too high or too low, he would be alerted.
Yes, and so would Sarah.
On January 15th, Joe died. This video from inside as Sarah wept over his hospital bed, shared publicly on Facebook.
I thought it was a woman who really loved her husband, but I was shocked that someone videoed it. There's no way in hell I would want someone videotaping me in my darkest moments of sorrow.
I shook my head and I didn't quite feel it.
I had so many different feelings because I thought, what did he go through? Was he in pain? Did he suffer?
When it was like time to say goodbye, she only let his mom do it. Because she told me, she's like, oh, his brother and his sister were just so ugly to me. Like, that's my husband.
The diabetic's sugar level tanked dangerously low into the 40s, that she ignored a phone app sending alerts and waited an hour to call 911 after finding him unresponsive. Investigators found up to 10 insulin pens on his side of the bed. 46-year-old Joseph Hartsfield's online obituary reads he passed away peacefully due to complications of an ischemic stroke with his loving wife at his side.
She was sad. Like, she would just be crying all the time on the phone.
A panel of doctors reviewed his autopsy and determined complications of toxic effects of insulin caused his death. Manner undetermined. I started digging into public records, calling courthouses and sheriff's offices across the country. Slowly but surely, we learned about Sarah's little brother's bizarre death, a murder plot she allegedly concocted, even a fatal shooting of her fiancé. The story quickly expanded. We crisscrossed the state of Texas, took a trip to the East Coast, and hopped a flight to Sarah's hometown.
They called us with Sarah, and we ended up with her.
When we got to Missouri, one of Sarah's foster mothers showed us around Otterville, a town of only a few hundred people, about 100 miles southeast of Kansas City.
They said that she'd been through some trauma situations with her natural biological family. She was required to go to counseling, and so I was prepared for a troubled early adolescent going into teenhood situation. I tried to let her have a typical teenage, we'd go shopping, we'd buy clothes, we'd go on vacations, we'd go to the lake, she could go to dances, try to have normalcy.
I met Sarah the summer between 6th and 7th grade when she moved in next door. It was like having a sister that I really wanted to have that camaraderie, to have that relationship with. I loved her.
We had a lake home, and we'd go down there and go out on the boat, and she could bring friends or whatever. So she did fit into our family well.
I immediately took to her, and I felt like she took to me, and we were instant friends. We all grew up together.
How would you kind of describe her as a kid?
She wasn't disrespectful or loud or really talk back. Her thing was she might be sneaky. If she wanted to go do something, she might sneak off or not tell you the whole story of what she's up to. But kids are kind of like, some teenage kids are like that too. She was never a loud yeller, talk back. She would just be quiet. If she was mad about something, she'd just quiet and give you evil eye and go to her room. I never really knew of anything outlandishly crazy back then.
Life with Barb appeared to be pretty different than Sarah's biological family. Records revealed her stepfather had an extensive criminal history and served time for a murder conviction, a love triangle that ended in a shotgun killing. In 1990, when Sarah was living with Barb's family, her 10-year-old biological brother still lived with their mother. He was playing with a nylon dog leash on the front porch when he apparently fell off the porch. The leash got stuck on the stair railing. Their mother found him face down, leash around his neck, after hanging there for at least 10 minutes, strangled, dead, when he arrived at this hospital in Sedalia, Missouri.
It was supposedly an accident, is what we were told. I remember her having to go to that funeral and just being pretty devastated.
Investigators ruled it an accidental death, acknowledging the bizarre nature of it. A county caseworker even noted their mother showed no emotion over the loss of her son. And follow-up reports showed discrepancies in the story. 33 years later, the Cooper County Sheriff's Office in Missouri reviewed the case, but found no evidence that shows it needs to be reopened.
It was really weird to hear that and to know that she had lost a brother, because none of us had been through anything like that before. So then I really felt bad for her then.
Despite the hardships in Sarah's past, she found love. So even in high school, did it seem like boy craziness?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I can't say anything because I was boy crazy. But yes, yeah, she was pretty, and she liked that attention. She didn't want you in the way. If she liked a boy, you knew it. And so I knew she wanted to have a serious relationship with someone.
When I first met Sarah, she seemed to be a very, very nice, attentive person. What I liked, she liked. She was fun to hang out with.
At Greenridge High School, Sarah met her first love Titus Knernschuld.
And then as the months drug on, she started to change a little bit, slowly, a little bit at a time. Just getting more controlling.
My husband and I were the ones that participated in her wedding. When her and Titus got married, my husband walked her down the aisle.
We were arguing, fighting all the time.
I knew that they had some relationship problems.
She'd break up, date other people, and then come back and I'd date her again. By that time I loved her and she was in my head.
Titus was Sarah's first husband, married in 1993. That ended in infidelity, and the next husband was his best friend. Several more men followed, each with their own stories about what Sarah was like. Christopher Donahue was third and longest husband, the father of her 4 children. That also came with infidelity, and divorce led to her engagement to David Bragg. After she shot and killed him in alleged self-defense, she married David George. Those are all the men who came before Joe. But who was she? Sarah joined the Army in 1997.
I was shocked because she likes her own way. And when you're in the service, you're going to follow the rules or you're going to be in big trouble.
Sergeant Sarah Donahue had a top-secret security clearance during her 20-year military career as a motor transport operator, then intelligence analyst. She had assignments at Fort Hood, deployed to Baghdad for less than a year, and spent 3 years at Fort Eustis in Newport News, Virginia.
When I got there, she was in charge.
What were your first impressions?
Anybody who tells you that Sarah Donahue does not produce a good intelligence product or is a good intelligence person, military intelligence, doesn't know her the way I do. Sergeant Donahue never once indicated to me in her actions that she was not up to the task. She was whip smart.
How would you kind of explain the type of smart she was?
Really almost genius. Like, she could definitely play a room. But if you let her talk long enough, like, you'll find inconsistencies every now and then.
When investigators started looking into Sarah Hartsfield's past, they realized she lived in dozens of different places in different states across the country, including here in this Williamsburg, Virginia neighborhood. It was only about 20 miles from Fort Eustis. Big houses, a very nice neighborhood. The family called it home for about 3 years.
She would always come back, she'd always call, or we'd see each other, and we still remained close. The kids considered us grandparents.
Every holiday was cool. Dinner was always nice. But you didn't want to, like, make her mad.
She was very demanding of the kids. She expected them to be like little soldiers. There was some family services called in a few times, but nothing ever came of it.
We get, like, spanked by our parents. Our dad would do it sometimes, but never to the extent of what our mom would do.
It was more aggressive?
Yeah, very.
And in the sense of, what would she do that was so aggressive?
You didn't really know when it was going to end. I was 4th grade, and I had stayed home for about a week because my face was all messed up, and I had bruises all over my body. And when I came back, just in side conversation, told one of my friends, like, yeah, man, I got to stay home, you know, because my face was messed up. And he's like, dude, that's child abuse. I'm like, what's that? And he's like, your parents can't do that to you. I remember she would always be like, oh, well, you can tell people whatever you want, but no one's gonna believe you because of the position that I hold in society.
Captain Markovic's first evaluation report of her didn't reflect any problems, only good work. But he started hearing from troops complaining about her leadership style.
There was no understanding of mistakes. There was no acceptance of mistakes. There was no benefit of the doubt given to anybody who worked for her. There was none of that. The same benefit of the doubt that she expected on her end, she never showed that courtesy to any of the troops working for her.
She was telling us like, yeah, I messed up a lot as your mom. You know, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, I did this wrong. And you're like, wow, an apology. But then she'll hit you with, but I was with your dad at the time and I was so sad being with him. Like, it was so hard being married to him. I was just so unhappy, and that affected me in a way which made me do this. There is an apology, but it's there's no accountability.
No accountability at home or at work.
We became very apprehensive and became very paper-oriented. We documented everything. We made sure we never talked to her one-on-one. There was always somebody else there.
The military brought the family back to Fort Hood. She and Christopher Donahue bought this home in Belton, overlooking a lake along the Lampasas River.
I think no matter what, she wanted everything to be great. The great house, the great husband, the great job, the perfect kids. And life isn't always like that.
On the outside, everything's nice. What happened in the house stays in the house. So that's kind of the mindset that we all had growing up.
The house, not far from her first ex-husband's, who for years worried about Sarah popping up again.
She kept trying to talk on the phone and just causing lots of harassment and trouble. She would drive over by our house. She'd park outside the house. We had to let the children know about her and, you know, to watch out for anything with her.
Sarah was in the Army until 2017, ranked a Sergeant First Class at the end of service. She medically retired and started receiving 100% disability benefits from the VA. During her first court appearance, she said the disability involves pins and screws in her feet after having a nerve removed, PTSD, severe depression, and cancer 3 separate times.
I did consider her a daughter. Everybody needs somebody that they know they could always come home to.
While in the military and during her third marriage, extramarital affairs crossed state lines.
If I didn't answer a text, she'd send an email or Facebook message me. If I didn't respond quick enough because I'm at work to one of her questions, she would just go ballistic. Whenever she got mad, it was like World War III. I mean, she absolutely went ape.
He thought she was getting divorced, but after 2 years, the affair was over.
It ended in about as horrible as it could ever be for a person. She went her way and I went mine.
It was kind of like another secret life that she was living.
Sarah and Christopher Donahue separated not long after. The official divorce filing started the year 2017.
There would always be some sort of resentment towards my dad.
But already, Sarah was on to David Bragg. He spent 4 years in the Air Force, one of 8 siblings.
We loved to aggravate each other growing up.
I remember just the standing presence that he had in the room.
He graduated from this Virginia Beach High School, a city where he also volunteered as a paramedic. His career took him to Fort Hood for a solar energy farm project. That's where he met Sarah.
One thing led to another, which happens very often, sadly, and it ended one marriage and started a new relationship. She went from being someone who kind of broke up a marriage to someone who now might be marrying my brother very quickly.
David moved to Garfield, Minnesota. Distance became part of the relationship. She traveled from Texas to Minnesota for visits. They eventually got engaged. Your brother was really trying to make Minnesota home.
He liked the solitude of being out there in the woods. He liked the ability to be an avid sportsman. She had left the kids, and the kids were actually going to school there in Minnesota, staying with my brother.
They were constantly arguing, like it was a lot.
She kept showing up with carloads of household stuff, and David kept telling her that he did not want her up here. It's not time for her to move up there.
He was, trying to figure out how to separate amicably and move on.
I woke up that morning and it was weird. Like there was just something in the air.
David Bragg, shot dead in his Douglas County, Minnesota home. He never made it to the altar to marry the woman who killed him.
Anytime you lose somebody that's a member of your family. I mean, it's a gut punch. It felt unreal. To me, it seemed planned.
Sarah was asked about the shooting during her first Texas court appearance. She explained her third ex-husband came to visit their youngest daughter to surprise her for her birthday, but David Bragg was mad at her for letting him see the kids outside of their normal visitation. She claimed she took a beating of her life, and shooting him was such an automatic response to make it out of the house alive. She said she wasn't scared when she went into the house, but she had 2 guns with her because she didn't want to leave them in the car with her kids.
The police came and talked to her. They never had her in any kind of handcuffs, that she sat in the front seat of the cruiser and was taken to jail. Like, she was never treated like a suspect.
So pretty quickly you realized she probably wasn't going to be charged.
It was clear to me by the time we left Minnesota that they were going to charge her.
8 months passed. Douglas County's top prosecutor declined to file charges, writing in this letter that David Bragg fired at Sarah before she shot back. He called it a justifiable self-defense shooting, as she was facing lethal force and had no reasonable possibility of retreating from the threat.
Seeing and knowing my brother and knowing the situation around it and the conversations that he had, with my parents about leaving and getting out of the relationship, it just felt dirty. It felt wrong.
When things go sour, she always tries to make all of us look very abusive. She's the poor victim. We were the ones that abused her. So that's the story she put on for this thing, and somehow the cops bought it.
If you were to come to me and tell me there was a shooting and she could not make it look like self-defense, that would surprise me.
How come?
If she could not stage a shooting as self-defense, oh, of course she can. Come on, it's her skills, training, attention to detail.
I don't believe that if he had intended to shoot that he would have missed. And I don't believe from his background and his understanding of weaponry that he would have, because the kids were on the other side of her.
I know my mom went in there like ready to do something.
There are a bunch of holes, I feel, in that story, and once we learned everything about it, we all were like, no, this is incorrect.
Yeah.
He was not this violent guy, and he simply wanted to move on with his life without her.
And it sucks because I know some of his family, and their version of him, I don't want to call them liars, but like the version that they have of him that they know is a totally different one that I know.
She sent a Facebook message to explain what she did.
I remember I was sitting there, it came through, and she was just explaining about how I'm not, this is what happened, I'm not guilty of this. I don't know why she would reach out to brothers or family members that she'd never even really talked to to explain herself.
And she actually reached out to your family to ask for forgiveness?
No, demand. She demanded that, our Christian beliefs said that we had to forgive her and that we had to accept her and that we needed to bring her into our family.
After he died, and I cleaned up the blood spot. We moved around the room that he died in, swept up all the junk on the floor, and we moved on with life. Like, no one talked about it.
Days after her Texas arrest, the same prosecutor reopened that shooting investigation in light of new information that came into the sheriff's office but wouldn't share more details. That review is ongoing at the time of this documentary.
She called to tell me, that story of her version and everything, and she was getting ready to start seeing her next husband, and she said he was a little bit older, and she told me that, and it just became, it just keeps getting a little crazier. So I backed off and I didn't reach out anymore, and we just kind of quit talking.
6 months after prosecutors cleared Sarah in David Bragg's death, she married David George. The newlyweds moved into the same home where the first David died.
The fact that she moved into the house post-mortem and took over control of the house was awkward. Even worse, she married somebody and moved to new significant other into that house.
A couple of years into their marriage, in April 2021, disturbing allegations involving the couple got the attention of the FBI and local police. Christopher Donahue, Sarah's third ex-husband, filed for a protective order after learning that Sarah allegedly wanted her new husband to travel to Arizona to kill his new wife. The reason? So that I would be too busy dealing with the death to focus on fighting for my girls anymore, Donahue wrote in an application for a protective order.
Yes, hello? Yeah, I had some flowers for Donahue.
This is David George actually showing up at his house with a bouquet of roses a few months before the plot was discovered.
No card or anything? Let me check and see if I got it.
But he never came back with a card. Donahue watched him drive away in a black car, which Sarah allegedly had him buy to drive to Arizona to carry out the hit.
Well, that one was another one that took me by shock. They were very scared. They were shocked.
The affidavit says Sarah told David George he wasn't allowed back in their house until he finished the job. But he'd been trying for months to get her to stop pressuring him, and he'd lie to her about why it hadn't happened yet.
I think David cared about her and was reeled into how good a person that she can be, and was trying to make her happy and keep peace.
I thought it was nuts, but you know, after the year or so that I've had with her from getting kicked out, I wasn't putting anything past it.
David George denied the allegations, calling them lies and fabrications in this sworn affidavit. He wrote that Sarah is a good mother and doesn't present a danger. But I contacted him and he said, I retracted the truth trying to protect her. Anybody who knows me knows I wouldn't do that. Sarah has two loves in her life. That's all she's ever had, herself and money. A week after the FBI reportedly questioned Sarah about the murder plot, she filed to divorce David George.
There's no other way to say it. He got played. Even when she was wrong, he's on her side.
One of the kids who overheard investigators talking to Sarah told their father, Mom lied about everything and the agents were gone. But Sarah lost custody of her two younger kids. A Bell County, Texas judge granted the protective order after finding that family violence occurred and was likely to occur in the future. The order still in effect. In January of 2022, court documents show Sarah's divorce with the ex she allegedly wanted to carry out the murder became final. Her Belton home sold around the same time. Welcome news for her first love who lives nearby.
She got with her fifth husband and they sold the house here and moved to Houston. So finally we felt a bigger relief because, okay, there's no longer a place for her to stay here.
When she first came at Thanksgiving, she was very nice, very, very nice, very pleasant. She seemed like she would be good for Joe.
When I found out, I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, she really met a dude on Facebook and they got married.
She quickly became part of the Hartsfield family. A month after finalizing her fourth divorce, after only 3 months of dating, Sarah and Joe got married.
It was too fast. And the women that he worked with kept trying to tell him, Joe, don't do it. It's too quick. I was going to sit down and talk to him before, you know, about all of it. And then he walks in and they're married.
What kind of a surprise was that for you as his mother?
It was a big surprise.
Joe was born in Channelview and graduated from C.E. King High School in Sheldon. He spent years working for the state as a parole officer.
He never met a stranger. If he loved you, he loved you. And he would always be there for you no matter what.
Last April, Sarah and Joe moved to this Beach City home, a gated community just steps from Trinity Bay. How were her interactions with the family?
They were very good until they moved.
What changed?
I really honestly can't really tell you. I don't know. Everything was fine and then it wasn't.
In December, Sarah went to San Antonio for a few weeks for a surgery and stayed with her son.
It was supposed to be like 3-4 days max. Her and my roommate had that argument, and then she left.
She posted on Facebook on December 18th, "In a bad situation, you have to know when initiating an exit strategy is all you have left and hope it won't take an eternity to recover."
She told me, she's like, "We're done." They were sleeping in separate rooms at that point.
He was leaving her. We went the next day and opened a checking account back up there where we live. He had already discussed moving with someone. And he just said, "Mom, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. If I stay, she's going to drive me crazy."
Did he also apologize to you?
Yes.
What was he apologizing for?
For all the problems she had caused us.
Sarah made this post around the same time. A man who has mommy issues tends to approach relationship issues like a boy. She posted almost every day after he died. One said, "I'm a widow. Those words and that title can't be possible. I know we loved each other dearly. I miss him so much."
As soon as I saw it, I was like, she killed him. It wasn't about her husband dying, it was about her being a widow.
It just seemed like, woe is me and I need this attention. And so I unfollowed her.
Chambers County's top prosecutor presented the case to a grand jury, which returned an indictment for murder. The arrest came February 3rd, a day after she turned 48. Does it surprise you that she's in jail?
No. Growing up, I'm like, what if my mom does get caught doing this? Because I knew she wasn't doing the right thing on our behalf. It's kind of surreal seeing it happen. Like, I know it's for the best, but it's still my mom, so it's kind of weird seeing it.
Honestly, we were all waiting for something else to pop up.
Yeah.
Just the way it seemed like it was like, when my mom told me about what happened to Mr. Hartsfield, I wasn't surprised.
One hand, it was a little bit of a surprise. A second, it was like, oh my gosh, she finally got busted. But the surprise was that she got caught.
Is this the same Sarah we went to high school with? Is this the same Sarah Smith that, we knew when we were kids or whatever? And I'm like, yes, that is.
Now behind bars in the Chambers County Jail, she's locked away in this all-women's cell with bunk beds, right next to the dining and bathroom areas. A small TV in the corner airs local television, and this kiosk lets her send and receive messages. One thing everyone told me about her, she loved texting, and I quickly found out that was true. She gave us her first public statement, denying the allegations, professing her love for Joe, and writing in part, "It's about time I quit being vilified by his family and by the public. I never deserved how I was treated, and Joe, our relationship, our marriage, our story ended way too soon and not by any wrongdoing."
Only on 2 tonight, for the first time, we are hearing from the woman accused of murder in Chambers County.
She saw that story from jail, and that's when more messages flooded in. When I checked my phone in the morning, it took about an hour to read everything she said. My story and the truth have me walking out of this jail free of all the false accusation I've been subjected, in addition to what is seriously character assassination on a nationwide level. She told me to quit the type of journalism found in grocery rags and be a reporter with class and dignity. She said if she's guilty of anything, it's picking horrible husbands. Pretty soon after, she blocked me, but her attorney talked outside of court earlier this month.
My issue with her was that I didn't want her speaking with the media, and that's because we know that anything that she says could be used in the court of law. Sarah's in a position where she's never had to endure this type of treatment as far as being incarcerated. Our defense is she had nothing to do with it. And if you had nothing to do with it, I mean, that's your defense. I never gave him medication. I never did anything with his medical. I was going through my own recovery at the time. Their case has diminished as far as reasonable doubt goes. They're focusing on past events and not this current event. watch themselves as far as their judgment towards Sarah. Wait till this whole case is complete. We know that we have the right to be considered innocent until we're proven guilty. And so I just want to remind the public of that.
You know, sometimes in life, after you see stuff go on for so long, you shake your head. What's heartbreaking is these people who have lost their loved one for some kind of senseless something. Why? Why?
This wasn't someone who was raised by a monster who you would expect to go out into the world and hurt other people.
When I got divorced, I was surprised I got out alive. People used to laugh when I would say it, but the same people now are like, oh wow, it's amazing you got out alive, thank goodness.
I would love to have my brother back. I would love for his kids to be able to call him on a daily basis. I would love for those relationships to be whole.
Do you think she's guilty?
Yes.
Do you think she's capable of covering it up?
Yes. Yeah.
If nothing happens, furthermore in her case down in Texas, I think someone else is going to end up getting hurt.
From 5 years, you know, you got 3 major incidences that many people would probably go to jail for, you know.
If she gets out of jail, I'm going to be very fearful of my life.
If for whatever technicality she gets out, let me know, because you know, I got to start watching my back. She is vengeful, she's revenge oriented, and yeah, let me know.
Are you kidding me? I felt kind of like we were hoodwinked.
I can't imagine that you do something in life and now you're in a situation where you can't drive a car again. You can't ever hug grandbabies. You can't hug your kids. You can't walk on the beach. You can't pick up the phone and make a phone call. I can't imagine that. So I really don't know. I don't know. As much as she likes control, I don't know how she's dealing with that.
There can only be so much coincidence.